There are people in the world who think that villains are more interesting than heroes. They say that heroes are usually boring. Well, nothing against the heroes, but somewhere there's a glance hit around the corner that'll say that's true. I mean, look at the life of villains. How cool is that? They know their powers as well as weaknesses, and staying within that limit, they challenge the heroes. Even sometimes they do fight for a rightful cause, but their way of doing it becomes an issue to society. Wait a minute, why am I talking about the villain suddenly in the Evo house? Well, today we have a villain character in the Evo house, a supervillain who used to appear in American comic books published by DC Comics, and soon made his place on the big screen as his popularity among the villains reached the zenith. Welcome back to Evo Chronicles, where we showcase the evolution of movies, video games, and characters. And in this video, we're going to see the evolution of Bane. I would like to warn you, if you watch till the end with utmost concentration, I'm sure you're going to fall for this character, because it is as good as it looks. So, let's start with his life, and then from there on we'll move to his evolution. Every villain has a story to dictate. No one's born as a villain or a criminal, but a series of conspiracies make a person victim of his own life. And that's exactly what happened with Bane. Raised in a prison on the island of Santa Priscia for the crimes of his father, Bane dedicated his life to honing his mind and body into a perfect weapon. Born in a prison on a remote Caribbean island, Bane was raised without pity or compassion. As an adult, he served as a test subject for the super steroid called Venom. Superhumanly strong, Bane escaped his hell and headed to Gotham City, where he chose to make his mark by defeating Batman. In order to wage his unending war on injustice, Batman has developed his body as perfectly as he has his mind. But there's one man who's broken him. A man who stands in many ways as his exact opposite. A physical marvel and a genius without peer. But whereas the Dark Knight was born to fight crime, Bane was destined for a life of corruption. Batman and Robin, 1997. The creator of Bane was Dr. Jason Woodrue, and was given his name as intended to be a Bane of humanity.
The ideal killing machine! I call this little number Bane.
Bane is the secondary antagonist of the 1997 superhero film Batman and Robin. He is a former serial killer and the strong enforcer for Poison Ivy, serving as her right hand and bodyguard. In Batman and Robin, Bane was originally Antonio Diego, a violent but diminutive serial killer serving a life sentence at the South American jail Pena Duro, and the sole surviving volunteer for Jason Woodrue's Project Gilgamesh. He was selected by Dr. Woodrue to be the initial test subject for a super soldier program. His hair was first permanently removed, and then he had 5 holes drilled into his skull with one on his chest before being strapped to a table in front of an audience that comprised of foreign dictators, military generals, commanders, commissars, sheiks, and terrorists, among other people. Dr. Woodrue placed a mask with 3 holes snaked to his skull on his head. He eventually pumped massive, concentrated doses of the experimental drug Venom into his skull and circulatory systems. See, this is what I was talking about. He was the result of the doctor's cruelty and his greed of becoming successful through his inventions. Originally, he was diminutive and scrawny, but after the Venom becomes effective, he becomes a hulking, vigorous, dynamic, and monstrous abomination, yet docile and deluded with almost inhuman strength. He was the ideal killing machine, as Dr. Woodrue called him. He was barely capable of speech, and growls, snarls, and speaks only 1 or 2 word phrases. His skin is green as a result of his origin, and his vocabulary is limited beyond a few words. Bane doesn't get to fulfill his purpose for Woodrue, who dies at the hands of Poison Ivy, and instead becomes Ivy's bodyguard. In this role, he works with both Ivy and Mr. Freeze in their plans to take over Gotham City. In Batman and Robin, Bane is portrayed by 2 actors. The first actor, Michael Reed McKay, plays Bane's scrawny yet deadly alter ego Antonio Diego. The second actor to portray Bane is Jeep Swenson. Swenson takes on the character after he's transformed. During the fight in the end scene, Robin and Batgirl kicked Bane's main supply tube, disconnecting it from the back of his head and stopping the venom circulation to his brain in the process. This, in turn, caused Bane massive withdrawal, and he quickly reverted back to his skinny self. But what happened to Bane afterwards is ultimately left ambiguous, as there is no evidence that he died in the fall of the telescope platform that occurred shortly afterwards. However, what appears to be the pool of venom around him is seen around part of the fallen telescope, and later destroys him for good. While Bane is described as a killer, and it's clear he's a very strong villain, throughout Batman and Robin, the character is depicted more as a caricature. His costume, his strength, and his dependency on drugs are retained, yet his personality is no longer present, and he's cartoonish in appearance. We all are left in the misery of believing that whether he is dead or will he be back in the next Batman movies. It took a long patience test, but he finally emerged. The Dark Knight Rises 2012. For Bane number 2, there's a marked difference between the character that's seen in Batman and Robin and the one that appears in Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight Rises. Here, the character is elevated to the role of chief villain. In this movie, he is completely seen as a different character, where his massive, giant energy just sweeps everyone away. In Uzbekistan, the CIA is extracting Leonid Pavel, a physicist. Some prisoners join the flight, but they're Bane and his men. They conquer the plane and abduct Pavel. Bruce Wayne, Batman, has locked himself inside Wayne Manor for the past 8 years since he retired as Batman. Wayne Enterprises is crumbling after he invested in a clean energy project designed to harness fusion power, but shut the project down after learning that the core could be modified to become a nuclear weapon. Bane stages an attack on the Gotham Stock Exchange and uses a stolen set of Bruce's fingerprints to place a number of risky investments in his name, bankrupting Bruce and forcing him to relinquish control of Wayne Enterprises. Correctly suspecting that his business rival John Daggett has employed Bane to aid in an aggressive takeover of the company, Bane lures the vast majority of Gotham's police force underground and sets off a chain of explosions across the city, trapping the officers and turning Gotham City into an isolated city-state. Any attempt to leave the city will result in the detonation of a nuclear bomb that was once the Wayne Enterprises fusion reactor converted by Pavel.
Gotham! Take control. Take control of your city.
Addressing the citizens, Bane executes Pavel at a football field, reveals the cover-up of Dent's death outside of Gotham City Hall, and releases the prisoners locked up under the Dent Act. Unlike the Bane of Batman and Robin, this Bane is not given an alias. He is also not dependent on drugs, and the Venom formula is not mentioned. His primary purpose in the film is to ensure Talia al Ghul can achieve her goal of taking over and destroying Gotham City. He will not let anything stand in his way, and he will kill anyone who crosses his path. In The Dark Knight Rises, Bane is played by one actor, Tom Hardy. For the majority of the movie, Hardy's face is covered by a mask, with only a brief glimpse at the man via a flashback. Meanwhile, Bruce trains himself for 5 months, recovering from the injuries Bane inflicted upon him, and successfully escapes Bane's prison to return to Gotham. On the last day before the nuclear bomb is to explode, he enlists Selina, Blake, Miranda, Gordon, and Lucius Fox to help liberate the city and stop the nuclear bomb before it grows too unstable and explodes. Batman confronts and subdues Bane, but is stabbed by Miranda as she reveals herself to be Talia al Ghul, Bane's friend whom he protected as a child and helped to escape the prison. She plans to complete her father's work by destroying Gotham and exact personal vengeance against Bruce for his death. Gordon successfully cuts off the bomb's ability to be remotely detonated, while Selina kills Bane. And that's how Bane's story ends up. The movies offer alternate interpretations of Bane, mixing up characteristics and visual styles from the comics to create vastly different villains. The Bane of Batman and Robin is strong and zombie-like, suggesting he's devoid of humanity. The Bane of The Dark Knight Rises is clever and resourceful. And while he too may seem devoid of humanity, it's clear he cares deeply for Talia al Ghul. She is his weak link. In bringing Bane to the big screen, the writers and directors of the Batman movies pick and choose which elements of the character work best for their respective films. As a result, Bane changes depending upon how he will best serve the narrative. So that's all for today's video. What are your thoughts on Bane? Do you think he should be included in more live-action Batman movies? Don't you think he deserves a solo supervillain movie? Whatever your thoughts are, just make sure you let us know, as we'd be happy to hear from you. Stay connected until we bring you another superhero evolution.